very consistently, otherwise it screws up.
10 per second.
Okay, so I'd like to bring us to order. We're 12:30 now. Wait for the video to start.
A lot of time. Real early in my installation.
Usually I get halfway through my
recording in progress.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, so I'd like to call this Finance Committee meeting to order, Wednesday, July the 3rd, 2024. And I'd start with a land acknowledgement to acknowledge that we are gathered on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Tla'amin Nation, as well as all Coast Salish First Nations on whose traditional territories we have the honor to live, including my home on Huete, also known as Lasqueti Island. So we have an agenda before us. Would anyone like to make any changes to it? Director Gisborne?
Oh, I see.
Corporate Officer
first.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to add under 11.1C, labor relations and other employee relations.
Okay, I'll remember that, and you'll help me with the wording when we get there. Okay. So that's a dish. Is there anything else? And seeing Director Gisborne.
Yeah, under 9.1, I circulated by email a staff report from the City of Kamloops, and I would just like to have that staff report included under 9.1, and I believe it can be added to the document after the fact. I just figured because we're going to be talking about it, might as well have it included.
Okay, that seems to make sense. Okay, so would anyone like to move adoption of the agenda as amended? Director Gisborne, is there a seconder? Director Lennox, thank you. For any discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, carries unanimously. Okay, we have minutes from June the 5th, 2024. Are there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, would someone like to move adoption of the minutes? Director Lennox, Director Gisborne, are there any discussion on that? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, carried unanimously. So now we're on to 4 delegations and inquiries. We have Annie Wise, the Executive Director, Sunshine Coast Tourism, to talk about their annual report and activities update for the year. The floor is yours and there's a Ms. Wise, and there's a timer on the screen to track your time.
Great. Thank you. Thanks everyone for having me today. My name is Annie Wise. I'm the Executive Director for Sunshine Coast Tourism. Happy to be joining you on the traditional territory of the Tla'amin Nation. And so I trust you received our annual report and update. And I just want to reiterate that we're super proud to be a partner of the Qathet Regional District and serve as your destination marketing organization. Let's see if I can get this to work for me.
Oh, towards Michelle. It does not seem to be working. 1 second. I'll try again.
I'll just chat while you work on that, if that's okay. Yeah.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I did want to just share a few highlights from the report and primarily some visuals. So hopefully we can get those on the screen, as it's just often easier to share it in that format rather than in the written report. But before I do, I just find that it's helpful to reiterate a little bit of background about our organization and what we do. Sunshine Coast Tourism is, of course, a nonprofit association, specifically what's known as a destination marketing organization, so DMO. And our mission is to build a strong and sustainable tourism economy in the region that's consistent with the values of our residents. And we work to achieve that mission through 4 pillars. So destination marketing, starting to work there. All right, it's working. So our destination marketing, visitor services, destination management, and through community engagement, which is really about increasing the awareness of the value of tourism with our local governments, as well as residents and businesses in the region. We represent the tourism industry from Howe Sound to Desolation Sound, including managing the MRDT program. We are governed by a volunteer board of directors that has seats that are both split geographically across the region to make sure there's good representation, as well as within different subsectors of the tourism industry, so that there's a strong voice between different, accommodations, activities, that sort of thing. And we're supported by a small staff team. We have a 1 year, a 5 year, and a 10-year strategy. And one of the key themes from all of those documents is the continued focus on both seasonal and geographic dispersion of visitors to the region. So our work really isn't about growing tourism at all costs. It's about strategically managing growth and supporting visitation in a way that balances the economic drivers with the capacity of our amenities, infrastructure, environment, and people. So I think it's really important that that all of you know and our residents know that our organization is really working to serve as a conduit for managing tourism and liaisoning between visitors, industry, and the community. And so when managed well, tourism is a really great vessel for all sorts of things that I believe makes communities great. It does, of course, have that economic engine that supports jobs and generates commercial taxes that help, of course, pay for important public services and take, hopefully some of that tax burden off of residents. But it also reduces our reliance on heavier industries and creates a strong case for environmental conservation, cultural protection, and of course, tourism activity also attracts businesses and amenities that make this a great place to live. So let's see. All right. So with that, that's just a bit of background, of course, about who we are. And I'll just share some really great visual highlights from some of our activities for the last year. So these are some screenshots from our website. We use a variety of marketing tactics to reach potential visitors, primarily in BC, Alberta, and Washington, using a mix of everything from traditional print advertising, television spots, digital media, and sector partnerships to generate awareness and consideration of our region as a travel destination, and then to turn that consideration into bookings, heads and beds. Most of our tactics call people to visit our website, which is the top travel site for the region and the communities within. In the last year, we've had over 1.4 million viewers or visits to the site. And it's imperative that our website both successfully and seamlessly serves the content that people are looking for, and that supports our region really as a 4-season destination. We're continually adding new content, photos, updating the information. And if you've ever wondered, hey, Sunshine Coast Tourism, why don't you market to Europe or Asia? And the short answer is that we do, but in partnership with Destination BC, which is the provincial DMO. This helps ensure that we're maximizing our comparatively small budget and not duplicating efforts in the marketplace. So our media plan brings in a variety of tactics, as I mentioned, across both the traditional formats as well as everything from email newsletters, print, and even some outdoor displays. And these are just our paid tactics. We also support our paid campaign with what we call owned media. So that's media that we own, such as our website, social media. And then we also support it with earned media. So that's media coverage that we don't pay for directly, but rather we try and earn, like by bringing in travel writers, bloggers, reporters, or other media to cover stories about the Sunshine Coast. So, sorry, this is a little finicky. And so if we look at one of our promotional campaigns and how we're evaluating the effectiveness of that and what the return is on the local community. So last fall, we launched our Time to Shine promotional campaign that encourages travelers to come to the region during the winter and the early spring. And again, has that mix of tactics across different marketing channels. And these are just a few of the ads that we ran that had more of a winter theme. And then as we transition into spring, so just the imagery, so kind of moving away from some of those sort of more winter focused into more spring sort of look and feel. And we complement it with things like this, which was a CTV sponsored segment that had both traditional ads and also on-air coverage during CTV Morning Live. We hosted 6 segments across the Sunshine Coast, 3 on the upper Sunshine Coast, 3 on the lower Sunshine Coast. In the qathet region, CTV did segments covering a town site and at the time, the upcoming film festival. They went to Willingdon Beach to talk about Prisma, and also did a segment at the Shingle Mill Pub to talk about food and float planes, but also as a recreation hub for the Sunshine Coast Trail and the canoe route. And then while those segments are playing, they're coupled with banner ads on the site. So just showing you some of the looks and feels of some of our ads. And then of course, we also have, these are examples of some of the paid social ads that are going at the same time. And so all of those things together, I could spend a lot more time sharing beautiful magazine spreads and pretty TV commercials, but instead I'm going to share how this campaign actually brings dollars into our community. So in order to attract the effectiveness, in order to track the effectiveness of these campaigns, we use cell phone mobility data to measure actual visitation on the coast in what we call verified visits. So it only counts people who are not residents of the region, saw and clicked one of our digital ads, and then physically made their way to the Sunshine Coast region within 90 days. We can exclude workers, trips of fewer than 4 hours, and we also can't count those who maybe interacted with one of our non-digital channels or didn't click on one of our ads, or maybe don't have a cell phone. And we also, so we can't measure everything, but just those digital channels. So based on visitor spending estimates, this campaign in particular generated a 24-to-1 return on investment from our marketing spend. So that means for every $1 we spent on marketing, we brought at least $24 back to the community in visitor spending. So we're super pleased with those results and also happy to see travelers visiting in the off-peak season when we need the boost the most. And so that's that seasonal dispersion piece at work. So the last couple of updates I'll share with you are more from our destination development programs. I don't know if you've been to Lund recently, but there's a time or two. But there's some fun stuff going on. So we were able in the past year to install new map boards at Little River, Earls Cove, as well as a brand new one in Lund. In Lund, thanks to the funding we received from the province through the Targeted Regional Tourism Development Initiative, we were able to install a new bike rack as well as bike repair station. This covered kiosk for a map and information board that really focuses not only just on, having a map so visitors can find where they are, but there's some sort of visitor actions about how to be a responsible traveler when you're visiting the region. And then the rest of the funding went to make some much needed repairs to the boardwalk as well as the water wheel that we've been working on in partnership with the Lund Community Society. So there's a couple examples there. We've also continued our Sustainable Sunshine Coast initiative, and we actually have now partnered with a new provincial sort of PSA style campaign called Don't Love It to Death, in an effort to both attract and educate respectful visitors on key issues such as garbage, leave no trace camping, water conservation, wildfires, wildlife, all of those things that we want visitors to know so that they have a good time and don't love it to death. And then lastly, of course, you heard from me earlier this spring about another project that we're working on. Oh, that's gone. That's fine. You don't need the last picture. We of course completed a preliminary feasibility study for the Connect the Coast active transportation path. I recently had the pleasure of sharing about this project in a presentation at the province's Active Transportation Summit. That was in New Westminster a couple weeks ago, and we continue to work on next steps on our end and to raise awareness of the opportunity that this could bring to our region. And then we're also helping a number of other groups that have that Section 57 status with the province, such as the Regional Cycling Association, Parks and Wilderness Society, Press, and some of those groups to assist them with their projects in terms of grant writing and some of the support. And it's been quite effective. And so helping those groups access funding that's sort of geared for tourism projects. So I will leave it at that. I know there's a lot more in the report, so I'll try and save a few minutes for questions. But again, just really want to reiterate, really appreciate, being a partner of the regional district, and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much for the nice presentation. So I will open the floor to director's questions, and I see Director Lennox there. Go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thank you, Ms. Weiss, for your presentation. Always good to see the details. And gotta say, seeing my boat on the first slide there in the harbor is kind of comforting to me. So if you need any more stock footage, we can help you. And the infrastructure you built there with the bike repair and storage, already seeing high use, and we'll try to keep the motorcyclists out of there, but, so that's really cool. And people were asking like, hey, who's doing this? So it was kind of like a kind of whodunit in the community until it was underway. So thanks for that as well. And I just want to reiterate, I really appreciate the don't love it to death approach, because several areas, especially in area A, that I can relate to, whether it's Savory or some of our Tla'amin Nation areas, are very sensitive, and we don't want to love it to death. So anything we can do to, or I can do to help you out with that. And I'm also interested in some active transportation, kind of our future there, because there's questions in the community. So I'll follow you there. Not really a question, but just some feedback.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions? Director McCormick?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Annie, I want to thank you very much for your presentation. Turning $1 spent into $24 coming into the region. That's really good news. So I think, really well done on that. My question is actually about a simple thing like a phone app that you can just click on and it gives you all the accommodation and restaurants and stuff. Does Sunshine Coast Tourism provide that so that people can use that as a tool, as a marketing tool?
That's a great question. Thank you. We don't have an app that's specific for tourism, and there's a couple of reasons behind that. One is that when we were sort of researching that as an opportunity a few years ago, we found that visitors to the community were pretty reluctant to download, install, and use an app for an average of a 3-day visit. And with other communities were really finding success is making sure that their website was as mobile friendly, mobile first as it could possibly be. So that's where we've made our investments. We did did a pretty major overall update to our site that launched in December of 2022. And so there's a really comprehensive directory. You can search for like all sorts of different amenities, features, whether you're looking for, a hotel room that's wheelchair accessible to a restaurant that's more family friendly and might have booster seats and things like that. There's a whole whack of different like search functions within the site, as well as just an overall mobile first approach. And we've really seen the traffic positively being impacted because of that. So that's where we've gone with it. It's something we'll keep an eye on as the internet continues to evolve in the way that people use it. But for us, we didn't feel like the cost of building and maintaining and hosting a separate app would be worth necessarily the traffic that we would get from it.
Thanks, Director McCormick.
Yeah, just a quick follow-up. Okay, that makes total sense. It's actually really complementary to what Tourism Paul River is doing here, because they have a phone app that you can just click on and it gives you all that stuff, and it's very convenient to use. So I'm really glad to hear that everything is working together, fitting together nicely. So thank you very much.
Okay, is there any other questions from the board? Seeing none, I'll thank you, Ms. Wise. That was a very nice presentation, and thank you for coming to us and presenting it to us.
Have a good day.
And you have a nice day too. Enjoy the sun.
Definitely.
Okay, so we have no unfinished business or correspondence. So we're on to reports, and we have one report, the 2025 to 2029 financial planning process. Believe it or not, next cycle is coming around the corner. What would the board like to do with this, or the committee like to do with this, I should say?
So moved.
Okay, move the recommendation. There's our seconder, Director Brander. Is there any discussion on this? So I'll say one thing, which is there was a couple options in the package, but I agree with the option presented to us. And as we've seen in the past, some of these meetings get to be long when we get into the budget, and so I think we can just look at that when we get to it and see how we're progressing, and if we need to, there's space in this to have that fourth meeting in March, because we're aiming to end in February. And if really necessary, we can schedule another meeting in between to ease the time pressure. So I think we can find ways to deal with that. But the schedule is a good place to start, or the process in the package. Okay, is there any other Director Dowd and then Director McCormick?
No, and I agree that option one is probably the best way to go, in my opinion. We could go shorter or longer with a shorter or longer number of drafts. But I think this is a quicker way to do it. It's more efficient for time. But I think it puts more onus on the directors to be ready when we talk about draft one and draft two. Actually think about the final conclusions that are going to happen at the end. Instead of waiting until we get to a draft four to make the decisions on whether we like it or not. You know, it's really up to the directors, I think, to make their decisions on what the values are earlier in the process so that we can do it more efficiently. Because if we don't make those decisions until later, that's how we end up having a draft four, sometimes even a draft five. Let's try to get option one and actually do it.
Yeah, roll up our sleeves. Thank you for that. Director McCormick.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Similar to other comments, I like the flexibility that although it's not spelled out in the report, during our last budget cycle, we actually ended up taking the month longer and sort of going the route of option two rather than option one. So I'm glad to know that we have the flexibility built into the process so that if we do need that extra time, it is available. And thank you very much for staff's presentation. I think the report is great. Thanks.
Thank you. And Ms. Green, do you have anything you'd like to comment on related to this, or we're good to go?
No, thank you, Chair. I don't have anything to comment on. It's the same process that we followed last year. And as you said, there is flexibility in there if the directors do want an additional meeting.
That's great.
Thank you.
So is there any other discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, I will then call the question. All those in favor? None opposed? Carried unanimously. Okay, new business. The impact that changes that senior levels of government have had on QRD operations and budgets. Director Gisborne, what is your wish?
I'll move the motion because I know how I like to talk about things before things are moved. So
okay, seconded by Director Lennox. Okay, Director Gisborne.
Yeah, I'll be relatively brief. I'm sure many of us have been hearing from members of the public about the increase in property taxation, and we've also been hearing from our own staff about the ever increasing burden of provincial and federal government downloading for a variety of services. It's hard to put a dollar figure to those downloading costs, but another elected official sent me a copy of the municipality of Kamloops' staff report, which goes down, you know, everything from the social downloading to carbon tax. And some of the numbers that they have in the municipality of Kamloops are quite eye-opening. And then there's some other areas where it's not surprising. As we all know, we're a regional district. So, you know, comparing a city staff report to a regional district on cost of downloading is kind of like comparing apples to oranges. But if we're going to, you know, push back on the province or ask for more money, if we have a staff report that says, hey, your downloading costs us X on this and costs us Y on something else, then I think that'll really help our case when, you know, we go to UBCM and AVICC, and to explain to the public when they go, hey, why are my taxes going up so much? We can actually, you know, point to how much of this is actually being dumped on us from the province, because there's some things where it is the choice of the board to increase the level of services. And then there's other times, you know, we're watching the news and the province makes some announcement, and the only thing I hear them saying is we're going to dump it on local governments to do. So that's why I like this motion. That's why I put it forward, that we can get that information, have our staff, you know, go down the list of everything that's essentially being downloaded, additional requirements around everything from FOIs to labor relations and all kinds of stuff. But I think our staff are the ones that can put actual dollars to what's happening. So I think it makes sense.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on Director Lennox?
Yeah, just wondering if staff can maybe provide an opinion on how much work this might be, or, you know, I think I understand the intent. I have the same questions around, you know, financial downloading, and we talk a lot about it, and it's hard to quantify, but I'm just wondering how our staff would tackle this, and how much work we have the capacity for. I see the
CEO?
CAO's hand there.
Hopefully you can hear me through the chair. I can tell you, you're not going to get it next month.
Yeah.
However, I think it's a valuable report. Staff already do have a lot of the
Okay.
Itemized items or, you know, downloads in file or on file. And if I'm not mistaken, it took the Kamloops staff 3 months, maybe 4, to produce the report from the time that they were given the directive. So I wouldn't expect anything, you know, short of that.
Thank you. That's helpful.
Director Isaacson and then Director McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. The whereas clause mentions downloading. Is the intention also to include like impacts to changes in legislation where it's not so much downloading, but it's just additional requirements for work on local government?
Yeah, Director Gisborne, could you address that?
Yes, it's very similar to what the municipality of Kamloops had put forward, where some of these things are just additional work on municipalities. Some of them have to do even with, you know, work safe requirements, things that aren't just municipalities or local governments. Some of them are just like industry wide. And I believe our staff can kind of discern, you know, which things to include and which things not to, because as we all know, we are an employer, and of course we have to follow the same employer standards as other businesses. And I believe that would all be captured because, you know, District of Kamloops included the carbon tax, which everyone's paying. It's not just dumped on local governments. Hopefully that answers.
That's your question, Director Isaacson. Okay, Director McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. I have to admit, I have some reservations about this motion. How far back are you going to go? I remember the public complaining about provincial and federal downloading when I was a newspaper reporter 40 years ago. This isn't new. But what is new is all of the additional requirements that have been placed on us. And Director Isaacson sort of was going there, and I'm kind of going in that same direction. We're required to do environmental reports and mitigation reports, whether it's additional work or things like Vancouver Coastal Health doesn't pay for hospital supplies anymore, so we have to provide them. I'm speaking generally, of course. You know, I don't know where you draw the line, either chronologically or in the breadth of all of the various aspects of things that cost us more money now because of changes in senior government requirements. So I think this is going to be a lot of work for staff. I think that they're very busy and have plenty to do, and really the information is out there. I guess if you wanted to look into how many things have been downloaded, one could simply research that. I don't support sending staff off to do this kind of research when it's not aimed at providing a service or a benefit to the community. It's simply an analysis of what's happened. And then what do we do? Take that information to UBCM and the province in that venue? Well, you know what? I don't think that's worth the effort that staff would have to go to and the sacrifice that they would have to make in terms of things that wouldn't get done when they're doing this. So I think we can do a lot of that research on our own, and I don't support asking staff to go there. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And to clarify one item that you mentioned, the motion has in it 5 years, so that's the 5-year time frame is built into the motion. So something that happened 5.1 years ago wouldn't be included. Is there any other discussion around the table? Anyone who hasn't spoken yet? Okay, seeing none, Director Gisborne.
Yes, just to respond and thank you, Chair, for pointing out that this motion is only to cover the last 5 years, because I know that many of us can think of situations over the last 30 years where senior downloading has been significant. One of the reasons why I would like this information is I presume that the cost of downloading is different between each regional district and municipality. I could ask our staff, you know, how much time has it cost for dealing with some of the new FOI requirements and things like that? But that's something I don't think is really appropriate for myself as just one director to be asking for that information. And one of the reasons why I think that this is important is we've already heard from staff that they've already itemized a lot of these things. And what we as a board can then do is not just, pushing back politically with the province, but there might be some services where the province continues to download. And we as a board then might look at that in the future and go, okay, the cost of this service is becoming incredibly onerous on us. And maybe we should actually cut back on that service or change that service because of what the province keeps dumping on us. So this motion is just the last 5 years. We've already heard from staff that they've already itemized a lot of these things. And hopefully it can also maybe relieve some of the stress that our staff are probably feeling from this additional downloading, that how it's already using staff resources. That's my understanding.
So I'll add myself on. I have a question for the CAO to follow up on Director Lennox's question. And that's, I can see the different sides of this. It does seem like valuable information, but I do have, concerns about adding on to staff. So the question is, could it, if we're relaxed on the time frame, because, it's not time urgent, it doesn't lead to a decision, as Director McCormick pointed out, that it's not something we would do something with. It's just FYI in a sense, but it might help us with our constituents. It might help us with our requests. So is this something that would be, the workload, would it be relatively incremental if it was done as part of the budget process? So I'm just thinking as staff go through the budget cycle and as they are thinking about the different line items, that they note that they're just keeping this in mind and going, yeah, that's something that we've had to do in the last few years. And is that, so would that be a feasible way to do this without it becoming, a lot of work for staff? CAO?
Yes, through the chair. I think that's a practical method. I mean, I like I said, we do have a list of items that we've already identified going back a number of years. So we can target those immediately. But I think doing it at the same time as the budget, it'll be forefront in our mind, and those will be just added side notes to a final project, if you will. And I have a suspicion that that's how the Kamloops city employees did it, because they would have been in their budget process when it was first announced. And then in that regard, everything was fresh in their mind as to what to start to tabulate.
Yes, thank you. And that's exactly what went to my mind when you said the 3 to 4 months, that when you've got your books open and you're looking at numbers and you might think, hey, this is something, it's just a simple question. Is this new? And if it is, write it down and then assemble those. And then it's not having to go and look at all those numbers on their own and think about that as a separate item. Director Isaacson?
Thank you, Chair. I think I see value in the comments that both Director McCormick and other speakers have shared, in the sense that it doesn't lend itself to providing service to residents, but hearing from staff that it could be a valuable report, and also knowing that Kamloops already has produced a report. There's a bit of a template to work from. It's not about starting from scratch, and there have been things flagged already. That I generally support this, given it's not urgent nature, and that staff can work on it as time allows, and there isn't a specific time pressure associated with it. So I plan to support this motion.
Thank you. Are there any other comments around the table? Seeing none, then I will then call the question. All those in favor of the motion? Opposed? Director McCormick, you're in favor? Okay, looks like it passed unanimously then. Thank you. Okay. Right, we had now, right, so 11.1. Okay, right, so we have a proposed closed session. Corporate officer?
Thank you. Yes, we have a proposed closed session. At adoption of the agenda, I indicated that Steve needed to be added, and I just wanted, it does not need to be added.
There was a question.
Oh.
Director Brander?
You passed over question period.
Oh, sorry, I did. I got all excited about in camera. Okay, question period. Is Mr. Galinsky in the room? or anyone else who would like to ask a question?
He is in the room. I'm not all excited about the proposed in-camera session because I can't attend. I don't have any questions for you this afternoon. It was very clear, Chair. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So seeing none, thank you for that, Director Brander. We're on to the proposed closed session. Director Gisborne, would you like to read the amended?
This one includes
motion?
C, right? Question of the corporate officer, this one includes C?
Oh, thank you. Sorry, that was C. I made an error.
Oh, okay. So I'll read it without C. I move that the committee move in camera that the meeting be closed to the public on the grounds that the subject matter to be considered relates to matters covered by the community charter under section 91K negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of regional district service that are at their preliminary stages, and that in the view of the committee could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the regional district if they were held in public, and end the consideration of whether a committee meeting should be closed under provision of this subsection or subsection 2.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that? Director Lennox, any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed? We are going in camera.
Well, this is an exciting topic. Yep. Well, people say nothing happens out north, eh? That's that one. Okay, it's back to the.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we're ready to go. So
Thank you, Chair.
we are back in the open meeting of the Finance Committee and we are adjourned.
Right.
You just put a little record on that one. And,
Recording stopped.
2 hours to the next
See
meeting.
y'all later.